Hello, love. So excited to be back with you. Here we go. I am knee deep in the summer heat. I mean, I didn't expect that to rhyme, but I feel like it did. Welcome back. And I have my beautiful co host, Jen Taylor, here, Coach Jen. And today we're going to talk a little bit about dopamine. You're like, Shannon, what? But I love this because I'll tell you why I wanted to talk about this. So, I've been doing this work a long time now. I mean, I don't know, 10 years, let's just say 9 years, 10 years, really, 8 years, really, really. So, really is like I was dipping my toe, but really, really is like really, really doing it. So, about 8 years now, I've been really, really into the work and getting coached and all the things and working on my brain, emotional eating, right? Redesigning my brain, right? From someone who was on the diet roller coaster to today. And one of the things that I noticed, because I love this work and I love to also watch myself. And so, like, what I started to notice, I did this little thing. So, we have these beautiful things. I'm holding my phone in case you don't know. I have this beautiful pink case that matches my nails. Anytime that I started to feel like stress, anytime that I started to feel an emotion or frustration that I wanted to grab for my phone. And so one day I was sitting in my office and I thought, I'm just going to put a tick mark. And when I grabbed my phone, the interesting thing is I just would like check my email a lot. I would just like look through my email, which how many emails can I mean, it didn't even matter. I mean, it was just, or I'd check Slack or something real quick. And so I started noticing how I did this over and over. So I took a sheet of paper and I was like, today I'm just going to do a tick mark to see how often I am reaching for my phone. So this is the crazy part, ladies. It was shocking to me. Throughout the day, it was like I was like attached to this thing. What I realized was my brain, if I felt any emotion like frustrated or just even like overwhelmed or like I needed to get things done or even bored, like, oh, all right, come on, like to the next thing I need to do, I would reach for the phone. The crazy part is the dopamine hit was 10 seconds. I'd look at my email and then I'd put the phone back down. And so it wasn't even this like long term getting in my phone thing. It was just this constant pull for it. So dopamine is released in our brain when we believe that we are going to get pleasure. And so this can be from food, I mean, right, love, I mean, all kinds of things will give us a little dopamine hit. You've heard a lot about dopamine hits, especially when it comes to drugs or food or sugar or different things, right? To me, that's more false pleasure. So you have real pleasure, which is for me, it can be anything from creating, like I love creating, my grandkids, my husband, whatever it is, right? Real pleasure, real dopamine. Or if I feel proud of myself, I get a little dopamine hit too. Sometimes I'll just be by myself going, ooh, Shannon, right? So I get a little dopamine hit, but there is also dopamine from false pleasure. And our brain, when we're feeling a negative emotion, wants that little dopamine hit. It wants that little whoop, that little high, right? Because it releases a little bit of pleasure. It's just important to know because I'm going to bring this back to why you're listening, which is food. So for many of you, you are reaching for food a lot. So if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling any sort of negative emotion, you've created a habit that I want the dopamine hit. Now, it can be food. It could also be phone, just like me. Maybe you're scrolling the socials or you're one who you just have to check the news all the time. I mean, all of you are different and have these different little dopamine things. And so, right, whatever it is for you. But I want to really talk about dopamine and the effects. And so, for my little research study on myself, I realized that I was now, instead of food, I was using the phone to get my little dopamine hit instead of allowing myself to feel the negative emotion and just move through it. And so I put my phone far from me. I wanted to start to be conscious because it was a very subconscious thing. It wasn't this like, I'm going to pick my phone up now. That's not how it was. I mean, before I knew it, I was on my Yahoo app. And then I was like, oh my gosh, girl, get off this phone. I mean, I could not tell you, ladies, like how many times I had pulled up that Yahoo app and I was like, Shannon, nothing's coming in that email. It's half of it's junk anyways. So, Jen, as you think about dopamine and false pleasure, how has that shown up for you?
Yeah, I mean, the same way, right? I'll go on my phone to do something, even for work or to check something else. And then the next thing I'm like on Facebook, it's almost like it is subconscious, but it's almost this like out of body experience because then I come back in and I'm like, what am I doing? I wasn't even going. And then I'm like, what was I doing? Actually, hold on a minute. It was funny as Shannon, we talked about this before. She had mentioned it before, and as she did, I was like, stop. I'm like, because I've been noticing this for myself lately. And so, yeah, I have noticed it too on social and part of it, I think, is because I've been trying not to be on social. And, sometimes when you're like, don't do that, you're like,
You're like,
okay,
oh,
we're going to ramp it up real quick.
yes. It's so interesting too, because I think about this with food and emotional eating. And I think for many of you, you just think you're out of control. And you just have this thought like, I'm out of control and I can't control myself and I have to eat. And then what happens over time too is like we start justifying it. We're like, well, I need to have my 6 snacks a day. I'm low blood sugar, right? I mean, ladies, I've been there. I have no judgment for you. I have done this myself. And I'm not saying I know there's some of you who really have it. Not saying that. I'm talking about the ones where, like me, maybe I did, but it was because I ate the bowl of candy. And so my body was trying to react to all the sugar that I had just ingested. And so, again, I can't tell you how often it was just a habit. I had just created this habit of reaching for the snack or reaching, or I'd be suddenly standing in front of the refrigerator, like just standing in front of the refrigerator, like I'm sure there's something in here I need to eat, or in the pantry, or, you're suddenly on the DoorDash app and you're just like, oh, cookies. All right. Right. I mean, ladies, this shows up. Suddenly you're on Facebook watching all the reels on how to bake a cake. And then suddenly it's 11 o'clock at night and you're baking a cake. Ladies, I know some of you are be like, oh my gosh, how does she know? Was she in my house last night? No, totally right. And so this all comes from our brain. This is how we're wired, ladies. Our brain is wired. We seek pleasure. We like to feel good. Our brain wants us to feel good. Our brain doesn't want us to feel bad. It doesn't want us to experience negative emotion. It tries to protect us from that. And so when you're going into parts of your nervous system, your brain comes in to protect you. This is how it works, ladies. Nothing is wrong with you. This is just how you're wired. I know all the media wants to tell you something's wrong. No, this is how we're wired. We're wired for that dopamine. We're wired for those dopamine hits. I like to just know what's going on so then I can change it. The first step, you will hear this when you're in Transform Boss. Every time I start a course video, I'm like, the first step is awareness. Because if you don't know, you can't change it. If you don't know what's happening and you don't understand why it's happening, you can't do anything about it. What you'll do is go for some external solution when the problem was never external, it was always just how you're wired, and you just need a simple trick, right? I think it's important for you right now, you're listening, to think about how is dopamine and your body wanting this pleasure, this false pleasure, how is it showing up for you? I mean, it comes in so many different forms and fashions because it can be shopping too. It can be so many different things. It can also be like overworking, right? So if you're a person who you're a people pleaser and you want to work the hardest and do the hardest, you get this dopamine hit from someone saying you did a good job. Tell you, ladies. And so I just like to be on to myself about it. Because then I can do something about it. And so, dopamine, again, there's real pleasure and false pleasure. Jen, when you think about real pleasure versus false pleasure, what is the difference for you?
Real pleasure is something that is more long lasting, right? Even the memory of like real pleasure, when I think back to a moment that produced real pleasure, real dopamine, I almost get that dopamine hit again just from thinking about it.
Oh, yeah.
False pleasure is just, it's draining, really. The actions that I take when I do false things that provide false pleasure, they're very short and usually actually leave me more drained or like feeling worse at the end.
Yes, I love that you brought that up because that is the true fact. What happens is like when I go to check my email or check Yahoo News, whatever it is, CNBC, whatever it is, right? Whatever, wherever I go on the internets, wherever it takes me, ladies, think we're taking ourselves, but maybe it's like things are helping us get along there. Wherever I go on the internet is really, it is draining. It is draining. I kind of go in and out of this. So I'll tell you my TikTok story. One time I went on TikTok. I got on it first time. 2 hours later, I was like, oh no, I will never get on this thing again because 2 hours later, I was just like, give me more, give me more. Like I was like a little addict, like, give me more, I need more. And I was like, oh no, no, I cannot waste my life to this app, right? But Facebook and Instagram have this little thing called Reels, which is very similar. And so I started noticing going through Reels, and then ladies, I mean, the next thing you know, you're like on reel number two, reel number three. Oh my God, I like that reel because it's just those quick hits of dopamine. And what's happening to all of us because of phones and the internet is that we're not allowing ourselves the space and our brains to just be. We always have some sort of information that our brain is having to process. See, in the olden days, I'm going to go back to when I was a kid. We would just go outside, we didn't have anything like distracting us, right? I remember actually like sitting outside, like in a lawn chair as a kid. It's so weird because I have grandkids and kids. And I don't know if they were doing much of that, where I would just be sitting and I would listen to the adults talk, and my brain didn't have to take in so much information. But when we have these things that every 15 seconds, it's switching to a new thing and giving you new information. It is just increasing the need for fast, quick information, which is draining our brains, I believe, draining our souls. And this isn't to say they're bad. I'm not saying that. I create reels. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying I like to know what is happening and the effect that it is having on me. So then I can decide what I want to do. I don't want to have a phone in my hand all the time. I don't want to overeat food because I don't want to experience emotion. Because when I do, the negative consequence of that is something I don't want. So, do I watch a reel once in a while? Sure. Do I reach for a snack sometimes? Yep. Right. I'm not physically hungry. Sure do. I just like to know, is it because I don't want to feel any emotion and I'm looking for a distraction outside of my body? And so when I think about being gone from me, right, being distracted from me, that's what happens when we have these false pleasures, like, the phones or shopping or other addictions or food, we're leaving ourselves. When I think about all the times I would just overeat and I was leaving myself at that moment, I wasn't experiencing anything other than the binge or the overeat. And so I like to be mostly in with me. I want to experience this body and experience negative emotion. Jen, when I say like leaving yourself and that experience of leaving yourself, anything come up or anything that you can add to that?
I just have noticed for myself just that search of like constant stimuli, right? And I think sometimes for me, it stemmed from a thought that if I wasn't doing something or taking in something and just being, that I was almost like being lazy, right?
Mhm.
Like I need to be doing something. I have time. I should be listening from a podcast and learning. I should be reading a book. And what I've just found is like really through my process, my goal has been to get back to feeling this inner peace, right? Of just like knowing myself so well and just being. And I think that when you can get to that point, there is just contentment with yourself. You're not looking outside of yourself. Everything you need is within yourself. Everything else is just that extra choice that you're adding, right? It's not because you have to or you should. I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does. Instead of this constant, I need the hit.
Yeah.
Right? Like I need the hit. It's like, no, I'm choosing to do this or I'm choosing to eat this because I enjoy this food. It's on my plan. I don't have guilt and shame because I find that a lot of this false pleasure, not only is it an escape, but then you escape for a moment, but then you come back and then you beat yourself up. So when you overeat, because you didn't experience the negative emotion, then you overeat and then you beat yourself up for the overeat. So you're in this constant like cycle over and over again of I don't want to feel the negative emotion, so I do something to escape. And then after I get that, 30-second dopamine hit, a couple minutes later, an hour later, I'm just beating myself up because why did I do that? Why can't I control myself? It just is this constant loop. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but I just wanted to lessen the noise in my brain. It just started with this simple thing of looking to see how many times I reach for my phone. So I want to give another challenge to all the ladies that are listening. Over the next couple of days, just get a sheet of paper and just start tick marking every time you reach or you find yourself looking for food when you're not physically hungry. It's just this like your brain is like, we're feeling something, boredom, loneliness, frustration, anxiousness, whatever it is. And I want food to help numb that. And I think when you do this, it's just, again, every time you put that tick mark, you're coming back into your thinking brain because that tick mark is going to also help you come into your thinking brain so you can decide, do I want to eat this? Or is this because I don't want to experience emotion? Ladies, I think about all my bosses and the work we do on urges and all the tools that we teach around like sitting through urges and allowing yourself to process emotion. And so, what I can give all my podcast listeners is just this simple challenge as a first step into that work. If you're in Transform Boss, you have plenty of resources and tools that we teach so that you can process emotion and so that you can also, sit through urges. Now, urges are the urge to eat, the urge to eat when you're not physically hungry, and allowing yourself to feel it without overeating. One of the things I would say that through this work that I feel the most powerful is that I can have all the food in my house. I mean, right now I have a bundt cake, nothing bundt cake in my refrigerator. It's been in there for 3 days. Ladies, there was a time where if I would have had a strawberries and cream, nothing bundt cake in my fridge, that was not going to be sitting in there. But I had a few bites of it and felt good. And now it's just been sitting in there. And I have a feeling I'm not going to eat it and I'll probably toss it. That is so powerful to me because there was a day where I would have eaten that whole cake and not even thought a second thing about it because of the urgency to eat. And again, so much of it stemmed from emotional eating and wanting that dopamine hit. So we have a challenge out to all the ladies. Anything you would add, anything that came up as you were listening to this?
Just recognizing that when we go to do those things, it's just because we haven't allowed that space to sit in the negative emotion or to sit with ourselves, reminding ourselves like nothing's gone wrong. It's just unfamiliar territory. And that's it, right? Like not making it a bigger deal. Sometimes I think we want to like dramatize some things, but I think just reminding ourselves, like, oh, that's right. It's just because I haven't allowed myself to do this, right? And it's unfamiliar. And anytime we're in unfamiliar territory, our brain's like, get to safety, get to pleasure, get out of here.
Yes, right? Oh, yes. Ladies, I just want to again always reemphasize there's nothing wrong with you. If you're carrying more weight than what you want, if you want to lose weight and you've been struggling, you've been on the diet roller coaster, you're in the right place because this is everything that we talk about, everything that we teach is around how to start to think differently, feel differently, so then you can do differently. And understanding how you're wired and understanding the challenges with how humans are wired, I think is just a part of it. And it's not this big, like, oh, how am I wired? It's not like that. It's very simple tools, easy steps. And I find that most of the things that I teach take, 2 minutes or less. And so when our brain starts again catastrophizing, oh, I don't have the time. And, it goes back to Jen of like, okay, brain, chill out. Everything's going to be fine. I can do this. It's good. All right, my loves. Oh, another packed full episode. And we're going to see you in 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, we produce a beautiful episode for you. And so we'll see you soon. All right. Bye, my loves. Bye, Jenn. Thank you.